One of the most extraordinary things was that suddenly Dusty got ill, and Dusty was one of those people that you would think would be there forever and would never ever get ill.
Sure.
But then she did, and you were chosen to go and look after her, or she asked you to go and look after her. What was that like?
Well, it wasn't easy. Initially, she was living in a house by the river when she had the diagnosis. And people were being very protective of her at that time. And I think she, being as wise as she was aware that she wasn't really being told the whole truth. So she asked me to find out what the absolute truth was, how serious it was, and come back and tell her. So I did speak to the medical people and found out that it was absolutely terminal, and I had to tell her, which clearly wasn't easy. And I thought about lying, but she asked me because she knew I could tell her the truth. I had already dealt with other people in my life who had died of terminal illnesses, and she knew that. And I think that may have been one of the reasons that she chose to have me stay around her all that length of time. I remember saying to her very early on that I thought there might be times where she might prefer it to be a woman, just because of the intimacy of it. But that never happened, to my real surprise. I was always waiting for the day where someone would say, oh, I think this is too personal, and a woman would be more comfortable. But in actual fact, she felt comfortable with me the whole time. And it was very difficult to be there. It in some ways made me ill, and it took some time to recover. It does when you look after someone who's very ill. But at the same time, it was a privilege of a kind, and a learning experience, because you come out feeling different about yourself when you do something like that. And it lasted a much longer time than anyone thought, because Dusty was much tougher than anyone knew. And it was 14 months when we really thought it would be something like 2 or 3. Overall, I would change it in that I wish it hadn't happened, but I'm very glad that I was able to be there.
My one regret as far as Mary Isabel Catherine Bernadette O'Brien, Mary, was concerned was that she really was not appreciated the way she should have been. But like I said earlier, she was ahead of her time vocally. I just wish she could be here now to see how popular she is.
If there was just one record of Dusty's that you could take away with you, what would that be and why?
Well, my favorite has always been, it's not a hit, it's a song from an album called I Had a Talk with My Man. It's from her second album, Everything's Coming Up Dusty. And I just think it's so perfect. She sings so much from the heart, but yet she's in control. And there's a wonderful moment where she comes into the last verse and she sings this slightly falsetto note that's almost like Cleo Lane. And it's by far my favorite performance. There are millions you could pick though, because she did so many great things. If You Go Away is another one, but I Had a Talk with My Man is without doubt my favorite Dusty track.
If there was just one record of Dusty's that you could take away with you, which one would that be?
Going back, the Carole King, Jerry Goffin, I think it's the soundtrack of her life. If they had tried to write a song for Dusty, they couldn't have done it better. It was brilliant.
Of all the records that she ever made, if you could just take one of them away with you, what would that be?
It's got to be Going Back. Didn't make a hit, did it? But it's got to be Going Back. I think it's one of the best things she ever did.
If there is just one of Dusty's records that you could take away with you, which one would that be and why?
It would still be Going Back. She made a lot of records that I liked. I was in the studio with her when she recorded What's It Gonna Be, which I loved. What's It Gonna Be is all cello and everything, and that was wonderful. But Going Back is still my favorite song that of all the songs she recorded, that's the one.
Do you still miss her?
Oh, like mad. I say good morning to her every morning. I've got a rose trees in my garden. When I go out and say, morning, Dust. It's a habit. You can't be with somebody for that many years. I mean, I was with Dusty longer than I've ever been with my husband, for instance. And I know she isn't here, but I can't accept the fact that she isn't somewhere else and listening when I say good morning.
There's no point in having regrets, is there really? I'd like her still to be here, but she is in the music. That's one thing about the recording industry. If we lose someone who's really great, we can always remind ourselves of them. The hardest thing for me is when she suddenly comes on somewhere, when I'm okay if I play a record, but if she comes on the radio, it really stops me in my tracks, and I find that difficult. I can't always listen, even now.